age of Aquarius is coming, and it's said to happen when the vernal equinox moves from the Pisces constellation into the Aquarius one. The stars have hinted at the rise of women in this coming age. So if we're supposed to rise, how come there's still very obvious discrimination against women? Well, if you really think about it, women were only really starting to be treated as equals during the end of the First World War. The women had to take on the men's roles, which started to make women think. Cue the rise of the suffragette movement, led by Emmeline Pankhurst. These ladies would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. This included refusing to eat, and Emily Davison even famously threw herself in front of the king's horse, and died to gain recognition for her cause. These women had to use extreme measures to get the vote, but they did eventually get it in 1918 for women over 30. This was a big step in equality for women. However, the next hurdle they faced was getting equal pay. After the war, more and more women started working, but employers decided that they could pay women less than men. In 1968, a group of women machinists working at Ford's Dagenham branch decided enough was enough and started to strike. This then led to more and more women workers going on strike, which resulted in the setting up of the National Joint Action Campaign Committee for Women's Equal Rights. They then organised a mass strike in May 1969. The women's efforts were rewarded because in 1970 the Employment Secretary, Barbara Castle, passed the Equal Pay Act. However, it was not implemented completely for 5 years to allow time for employers to adjust. This was then updated in 2010 and is now known as the Equality Act. Despite this, there still seems to be an issue with gender equality, with the current pay gap between men and women for full-time workers being 13.9%, according to the website Fawcett Society. However, in an anonymous survey we conducted, 98.3% of the people that responded said that women should be paid the same amount as men, but only 51.7% of the respondents think that there is an issue with equality. Now, you've probably heard of feminism. Its official definition, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of the equality of the sexes. Now, out of the people who answered the survey, 31% said that they were feminist, and 51.7% said that they agreed with some of the policies. But what do modern women think feminism is?
Okay, so feminism for me isn't, I guess, about females specifically, as in leadership, etc., etc. It's more about equality. So I think from my perspective, feminism is about everyone having an equal opportunity.
Do you define yourself as a feminist?
No, not necessarily. Again, it goes back to my first answer, is that actually I like to think in a sort of more equal way. I wouldn't really define myself as a feminist, though.
Do you feel you get treated differently to your male colleagues?
Sometimes, but I think it's quite unconscious. So I don't think it's consciously done. I think it is literally just, I guess, how we've evolved as people, as female and male. So it is when men are kind of treating you in a certain or particular way, I think it is very much unconscious. Sometimes conscious, but very rarely.
What are your opinions on the pay gap issue?
So I don't quite understand or can't quite comprehend why there is an issue and why there is a gap. So from my perspective, everyone, if you're going to be looking at people as individuals equally, then how can you justify a particular gender should be earning more than the other?
Do you feel that normal women are underrepresented?
What's normal? So, I mean, maybe there isn't, I guess, a representation of a diverse group of women, but I really wouldn't know what you'd say by normal. I mean, I think in the media in particular, I think a certain type of women are probably represented in the media more than others.
Do you believe that women's rights have improved, and how?
Absolutely. In certain industries, probably more so than others. But it's one of those big changes, I guess, in terms of mindsets. It's quite ridiculous thinking of it that way, but it really is. I mean, if you go back to what, I guess, suffrage and what women went through to get a vote, that was quite extreme, whereas we don't do things like that anymore, and I think that's because things have changed dramatically.
And do you think we will ever achieve equality, and why?
I'm actually not quite sure with this one. I think so. I think there needs to be, because I think people are asking the question of, well, why, take the pay gap as an example. people are now starting to question, well, why should they earn more than me? So, yeah, I guess so. It has to as well, really.
Now that's what it's like to be a woman in a high position working for a successful bank. Now let's see what it's like fighting for women's rights.
Feminism for me is to be recognised in my own right, regardless of my gender. So pretty much to be treated as an equal. In respect of my own interpretation of what feminism is, yes, I would call myself a feminist.
What are your opinions on the pay gap issue?
I think pretty much it's disgraceful, although it doesn't happen here within our business, because women have been involved in the business pretty much from the start. We've always considered that women are on the same level as men in our business. However, I know that isn't the same worldwide. Women and their representation in the media. I worry that sometimes the media picks up on the wrong things when women are concerned. For example, Theresa May, the media is far more likely to pick up on what she's wearing, as opposed to when we had a male Prime Minister. So yes, I do worry that the media will pick up on issues which make women look maybe inferior to their male colleagues.
Do you feel that some women objectify themselves?
Yes, I do. That can sometimes be for gain. Maybe if you take an interview situation, some women can probably dress differently in the hope that is going to push them further on with their interview, or give them some kind of advantage over less attractive people, let's say.
Do you believe that women's rights have improved, and how?
Our women's rights have improved tremendously. Back in the 80s, I was an equal opportunities officer for the government union of Nalgo. And back in those days, we were fighting quite hard for women's rights, not only women's rights, but ethnic minorities and other minority groups. And yeah, it was difficult, but maternity rights are much better. Pay rights, although they're not perfect now, they are much better than they ever were back in the 70s and 80s. When you think that back in those days, women used to aspire to marrying somebody who could, keep them. Now women aspire to having a career. So yes, women's rights definitely improved since then.
And do you think that we will ever achieve equality?
One would hope, as somebody who likes fighting for women's rights, I would hope so much that we can hope for equality in the future, and why not?
Equal Opportunities Officer for NALGO, which stands for National and Local Government Officials Association, feels about equality. There has been a dramatic change in equality over the last 100 years, but what was it like growing up during that time?
Feminism for me is the right to be a woman, but to have the same opportunities and equal opportunities as men.
Do you define yourself as a feminist?
Yes, I think I do, although I still like to be treated as a woman.
Do you feel that attitudes towards women have changed from when you were growing up?
Very much so. I think women have become much stronger, and I think men sometimes have a difficulty in coping with that, and they treat women a lot differently. And women are treated differently within the workplace to when I was growing up.
What are your opinions on the pay gap issue?
My opinions of the pay gap issue go back to when I first started work. I worked for the Prudential Assurance Company at their head office in Holborn, and I was there a year, and we were given a pay rise, and I'd joined the company at the same time as two young men that were sitting opposite me in the office, and we were called to see the office manager to be given how much we were getting, and I was given a pay rise of 1 shilling and sixpence, which is about 12p in today's money. And when we were talking, the boys had been given £2 a month, which they were doing the same work as me. And when I queried this with the office manager, he said it was because men were expected to stay in the job and women were usually left to have a family when they married, so weren't considered worthy enough of being given a pay rise.
What do you think about the way women are represented in the media?
If they're used as body shots, then it's detrimental to women. You very rarely get women with opinions portrayed in the media.
Do you believe that women's rights have improved, and how?
They have to some extent, because women can now go back to work after they're pregnant. Their jobs are held open for them, which wasn't the case years ago, and they can try to achieve higher standing within the companies they work for, where they wasn't before. I'm not sure about the pay situation, whether they get equal pay now. I don't think they do still.
Do you think that we will ever achieve equality, and why?
I very much doubt it, because I think that women will always be seen as homemakers, rearing families, and men are the breadwinners. And I don't think women will ever be seen as winners as a whole, although obviously women do run the family if they're on single parents.
That's the opinions of 3 women, but on an internet debating site there is quite the opposite opinion, with one user saying that women in history have not earned the right to be at the same social level as men, and they won the debate 98-39. Plus, in the US there are more male CEOs named John than women CEOs overall, according to an article published by the Huffington Post, so it's clear that opinion is still divided. Despite all of this, times are changing, and women are gaining more social respect in today's society, but we still have to work together to make sure that the progress that has been achieved doesn't take a step in the wrong direction.